Gus T Renegade, yes, for today's program. If you've been tuning into the program, we did a whole show dedicated to the front page of the University of Washington's paper on February 5th, 2010. I felt there was a blatant, conscious act of racism, white supremacy on the front page of the paper, and felt it needed to be addressed. I definitely wanted to make sure that I was not giving the impression that I had a judgment or a criticism of the non-white female who was pictured and, in my view, horribly mistreated with the front cover of the University of Washington's paper this past Friday. She listened to the program and indicated that she'd be willing to come and share her views on what happened with the paper. Also, the paper was pretty much the story that was dedicated to this non-white female was also about a radio program that she co-hosts here at the University of Washington. She said she would be willing to come hang out with us, share her views, talk about the paper, give us some of the inside tidbits that we missed out on, and just general discussion, racism, white supremacy. Treat to have her on the program. University of Washington. She is majoring in pre-health. Should be graduating in a matter of months, studying hard for the MCATs, and took time out of her busy schedule on President's Day to speak with us here at the C.O.W.S. Our guest, Christine Tran. Ms. Tran, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, loud and clear. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on a day when you have no class. You could have been propping your feet up and having peppermint tea, and you're here to chat about racism, white supremacy. We are quite appreciative.
My pleasure.
Groovy. For the folks who might be listening in, we have a full switchboard already. The folks who are listening in who might not have heard the previous program, could you just give them a little bit of background information about who you are and the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. Well, as Gus said, I am double majoring at the UW in physiology and sexuality and gender studies. Last quarter, the ASUW, that's like student government for the University of Washington, contacted me through, and many other students, through a mass pre-health listserv email asking for a host that would be the medical correspondent for a show that they were hoping would be a bit like Loveline. So there would be professional medical advice, with the disclaimer that I'm not an actual doctor yet. And that would be coupled with a comedian who is Ross Parsons, my co-host. I was quite quickly and easily selected to be the medical correspondent for Genital Discourse, and from there we started the show. We did 2 shows before the Daily came out with their article on Genital Discourse, which was purposefully timed to be in the sex edition. And I was okay with that because the show is, well, Genital Discourse is a show about sex, health, and sexual health. It's an open forum for students or anyone who listens to Rainy Dog Radio to call in and ask those questions. But the Daily came out with a front page. Let's see, I have it here in front of me. And Gus did the full run-through of this on his show on February 5th, I believe. But there's a huge headline that says, "Let's talk about sex." Sex is in big, bold red letters. A microphone extends from the word sex, pointing directly to my mouth, and I'm making a really awkward, confused face that doesn't line up with my supposed position as the authority on genital discourse. This was coupled with, like I said, the sex edition, which was a lot more sexual in nature than I remember old sex editions being. And a lot of people, including the Daily, argued that they were just doing a show or they were just doing an article to promote genital discourse and to let people know that there was this resource pertaining to sexual education on campus. But, I mean, if that imagery connected to that headline wasn't enough, on the front page it also says, on a little side column, it says, "Not getting enough sex from the above story? Look inside. You'll be pretty satisfied. Mature eyes only." And so what Gus talked about and what Ross and I talked about on the last episode of Genital Discourse we had this Friday was that this was a pretty blatant, sexualized image of an Asian female that was taken completely out of context. Like, the Genital Discourse is not a sexual show. It's not, you know, we said this on last week's edition of Genital Discourse. It's not like we were doing a 1-900 call-in number. It's a professional health information show, but it was blatantly sexualized with my face as the face of Genital Discourse, despite the fact that my co-host is Ross Parsons, a white male.
Very interesting. Very interesting. As I said, quite a few folks listened to that program live when I actually did the program here at the C.O.W.S to address my thoughts on the front page of the paper. The program aired on, actually it aired technically February 7th because it was after midnight. But quite a few folks tuned in live, and we've had a few hundred folks have listened to that program in the week that it's been available, and has generated quite a response. So I think a lot of folks, they'll be interested to hear, you know, more information about how that unfolded. I'm kind of not going in a linear fashion here, purposefully. I want to get to the paper. I want to make that the last thing, right? So we're building up to getting to exactly how this went down, the photograph, the interview, and your thoughts about the paper the day you saw it, the first time you saw it, and all that good stuff, which I think is just fascinating. Before we hop into all that, context of white supremacy, always important. I'm gonna switch this up and do it a different way. Are you a black female?
I am an Asian female, so-called Asian.
Okay. We're going to see if we can get the questions answered. I'm doing this purposely, so just humor me for like 30 seconds. So are you a black female?
No.
Okay. So would that mean that you are a white female?
No.
Do you think under any circumstances there's anything you could do, anything you could say to be accepted by a considerable number of individuals who are classified as white? Do you think there's anything you could do or say that they would accept you as a white female?
No. I think I could be accepted as a professional non-white female who has her stuff together, but never as a white female.
To your knowledge, have you ever been accepted as white by a significant number of people who are classified as white?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So not white, not black, non-white female, specifically Asian female. Would that be accurate?
Very accurate.
Okay. I just want to point this out for our listeners. Now, it could be raised because people do tell fibs and people do practice deception, particularly when it comes to racism, white supremacy. So it could be said that our guest could be not telling the truth about her racial classification. I have known this person for closing in on 2 years. I have seen no evidence that this person could be accepted as white by other white people. And in fact, I would submit the newspaper as Exhibit A I think this is a non-white female and she's being mistreated on that basis. I would submit the newspaper. This program, Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, white supremacy, and the definition that I use for racism and white supremacy is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe such a system exists, and do you think that is an accurate definition?
Yes and yes.
Simple. Wow. Such a stark contrast to yesterday's program. Wow. Yes and yes. I'm going to switch because I know our guest, she was excited about having some time with our co-host, the all-star Justice. Justice, do you have some questions you would like to ask our guest?
What do you do when you are around white people who practice racism and white supremacy?
I think on a daily basis, I am generally just on my best behavior, not to be judged, as to try to act as, to present myself as professional as possible. Because I'm trying to do things with my life that involve a lot of connections with white people, letters of recommendation and such. And so I'm conscious of the way I act, but I would have to think about that a bit more, and I might talk about it later in the program, but I'll keep that in mind.
All right. How do you function around Black people everywhere you go?
Around Black people, I would say that I have been heavily conditioned by the place that I grew up, which was a very well-off, predominantly white, isolated neighborhood. So I've been conditioned by that, as well as my family and the so-called Asian community that I live in, to have fearful or suspicious reactions to Black people. And so that's been with me for most of my life, but having learned more about the systems of racism and white supremacy in the past 2 or 3 years, which is not a coincidence that that coincides with how long I've known Gus for, having learned more about this system, I do make conscious efforts that have almost become second nature to try and see them as non-white people, but still making the distinction between non-white people and Black people. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep. That's good for now.
Okay.
All-star Justice, excellent questions as usual. Again, and I told I guess Christine Tran, I would be saying Miss Tran, but she chastised me. She said I sound like a telemarketer when I say that, so I'm probably going to ease up and just say Christine for today's program. I told Christine this is going to be a challenging interview. We're going to be asking bold questions, and to use Robert Jensen's phrase, we're going to shoot for as much honesty as we can stand. This already very interesting program. Happy she could hang with us. Could you break that down for me so I can understand? You said you make a conscious effort now that you are more informed about racism. You make a conscious effort to try to treat Black people as non-white people, but keeping in mind that they're black people. Can you kind of explain what that means?
To see them as fellow non-white people in the system of white supremacy who are also victimized on a daily basis, but also recognizing that history has placed black people in a special category of being of non-white people by virtue of having heavily victimized them throughout white history.
Do you think the victimization that black people have experienced is above and beyond that non-black, non-white victims experience?
I would say so.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay, so I want to backtrack, and I have to pitch because I think this is an excellent point, but I do not get credit for this one. This came from Lauren Ashley, loyal listener. She might call in with a question today, and she's a black female. The picture that I have is also from the University of Washington school paper. The picture that I have for the program is from I guess a rally that a student organization at UW had in 2007, Asians Against White Supremacy, also known as March 1st Solidarity. Christine Tran was a member of this organization, and she participated in the rally, and someone snapped a photograph with her having a very serious look and holding a sign that reads, Asians Against White Supremacy. Lauren Ashley, she looked at that photograph and she said, wow, she doesn't look confused in this photograph. She looks like, she knows what's up, system of white supremacy. She knows where she stands within that system. How did she, miss the newspaper? How did she not pick up on that? And I thought that was an excellent point. So that's why I'm not going in a linear fashion here. I'm going to go back to this photograph so we can, I guess, explain the context of this picture and what you were doing with March 1st. Can you kind of chat about your involvement in that group and just what you took from that experience, March 1st for Solidarity?
Yeah, so that was my first and I would say for now my last foray into campus activism, and I met a group of people who had a lot of experience doing activism, and we coalesced around the issue of U.S. military expansion in South Korea. They were trying to expand military bases in an effort to attract more Army personnel over there and to have them stay over there longer, to attract their families to move over there with them. So they were tearing down private property and appropriating farmland of South Korean farmers for this purpose without the permission of the farmers, and we interpreted that as an act of white supremacy. And from there, the campaign that March 1st Solidarity focused on for pretty much an entire school year was to pressure the University of Washington administration into divesting their stock portfolio of companies that were U.S. military contractors. My involvement in the group was that I was there from the beginning. I actively participated in all of the meetings. I helped put some of the panels together. I once gave a lecture on Asian women in the context of white supremacy, specifically, I believe, specifically in the context of being exploited by U.S. military overseas as sex workers, which, now that I think of it, does make it even more surprising and maybe even appalling that I participated in that, but was unable to see at first the racism and the sexualization of non-white females that was displayed on the front page of the Daily. What I learned from March for Solidarity was, to put it succinctly, I learned how powerful the system of white supremacy is. Like I said, we spent the better part of 2 or 3 quarters organizing on campus, getting our name out, making March for Solidarity known. And in that picture, I was participating in pretty much the pivotal protest where we rallied students at the hub, which is like the union building for UW students, and we marched to President Mark Emmert's office. And we made our demand for divestment from U.S. military contractors. And the University of Washington Treasury contacted us, I believe like a couple days afterwards or a week afterwards, and they told us that the University of Washington invests based on fiscal return and not social responsibility. And that was final. So that was the end of March for Solidarity campaign.
I'm sorry for laughing. I remember all this. I'm just going down memory lane. I remember all of this distinctly. Please continue. Sorry for my chuckling.
That was pretty much my answer. That was what we did with March for Solidarity. That was what I learned from it. It was just a very valuable experience to have learned a lot about systems of power and have talked about racism in the classrooms of the University of Washington, and then to kind of take that knowledge a step further and apply it and, use it to evaluate things that were happening in the world and to try to make a difference and to give this proposal to the University of Washington, which was where these academic explorations of mine had started, and to have them throw that back at us was quite eye-opening for me, because it illustrates that big institutions and corporations aren't exempt from white supremacy. If they're run by white people, they're no matter what they teach, they're most likely going to be still very invested in maintaining that system.
Wow. I want the listeners to know, as I said, it's a very interesting experience for Gus T Renegade to go through this. It's probably one of the first times I've had a guest on the program that I know pretty well. March 1st was also a pretty impactful experience for myself. Although I was never a member of this group, I was never invited to join this organization. I did go to some of the meetings. I believe I saw our guest, Tran, give her presentation on the abuse of non-white female sex workers in Korea. Very interesting experience with March 1st. I wanted to ask you, Christine, in my view, and I could be wrong, feel free, just, give us your view. I feel that March 1st, the unraveling of March 1st Solidarity, this organization no longer exists. I feel that Gus T Renegade, a.k.a. Black Jim, played a major part in the unraveling of that organization, and specifically around my views on sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people, because to my knowledge there was only one white person in the group, the suspected white supremacist known as Matthew Hamilton. And he, of course, was in a sexual relationship with one of the Asian females who was a member of this organization. And my views seemed to cause him a lot of problems and ended up, in my view, being one of the significant factors in this group falling apart, if not the principal factor in this group falling apart. Do you feel that that is an accurate assessment of what happened since you were a member of this group? You had a bird's eye view of everything that went down. Do you think that's accurate? And can you share, if you do think that happened, can you share some of the experiences that you saw around how this group fell apart, around sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people, just that idea being discussed?
For sure. Before I get into that, though, just a little note, if anyone wants to do extra credit research or something. While March for Solidarity did indeed fall apart because of exactly what you talked about, it has been reincarnated with most of the original members in another student group on campus called Democracy Insurgent, which I believe now has probably 2 or 3, definitely more than just Matthew Hamilton, the suspected white supremacist member. So it's still alive and running, but wow, I haven't thought about about that situation in a while. I think, can I bring Yellow Manny into this? Because I do feel like he was a principal factor in your views.
I do, and I think people know I have high regard for Yellow Manny, but I would prefer to get your view. If we could save Yellow Manny for a little bit later in the program, I would prefer that. I would prefer to get your take on this, because I would prefer to actually have Yellow Manny on a whole separate program, so we can just have Yellow Manny Day and he can share his views on lots of things.
Okay. So yeah, in a sense, I guess I did get a bird's eye view, because while I was part of the group, I wasn't explicitly involved in many of the pivotal conversations that revolved around the idea of sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people being an incorrect thing to do under the system of white supremacy. And those ideas were introduced to the group by Gus, and Matthew Hamilton did not take that very well at all. It devolved to a point where we had arguments about the definition of white supremacy, and we would be at lunch and having conversations about this, and Matt would start saying, and we would start asking him questions about white supremacy, if the system existed. And then we would ask him, are you white? Do you consider yourself white? And he would say no, and insist that that had been his view all along. And this information came out in May, whereas we'd been organizing together since probably October or November. And from there on out, with his declaration that he was actually not white, even though he is white and he can operate as white and have white privilege under the system of white supremacy, he kept insisting that. And on the flip side, his partner, the non-white Asian female, who is also instrumental in the founding and the running of March for Solidarity, she also began to heavily disagree and have conflict with people who kept interrogating Matt about why all of a sudden he was not white, now that this conversation was coming up. So her defensiveness of Matt and his racial identity and of their sexual relationship, coupled with Matt's deception, I would say, was a key factor in the dissolution of March for Solidarity, in addition to, the fact that the UW said that our campaign was, fundamentally disrupting the way that or would fundamentally challenge the way that they invested, since their investments aren't based on social responsibility or a sense of justice. They're based on how much money the university can get back.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Again, our guest today's program, Christine Tran, Context of White Supremacy. I just want to clarify before we let loose of the whole March 1st experience. You already shared that you grew up around white people, well-off white people, and had been conditioned to be fearful and suspicious of black people, and that you just, recently have begun to challenge some of that conditioning and to be conscious of it and to try to work against that. Can we get an honest assessment when you first heard Gus T Renegade, a.k.a. Black Jim, black male, no resources, pauper, poor dude, Black Jim, mouthing off about sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people? Hearing this, can you give an honest opinion of what your thoughts were about Black Jim's viewpoint on this at the time that you first heard it? I guess this would be like spring of 2007.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit difficult to remember exactly what I was thinking back then, but trying to be as honest as possible, to put this all in the context, besides the context of white supremacy, that was a pivotal time in my education about this. So there was a lot of restructuring of thoughts and beliefs going on in my head, and so much of what I had been taught for so long was being disrupted that I was pretty open to new ideas, but I think I was introduced to Black Jim, aka Gus's, ideas about the system of white supremacy in general before I heard how vehemently you disagreed with sex between white people and non-white people. And when I heard about your views on white supremacy as a system, I thought they were very logical. I was very impressed with the way that you were able to explain that to people in a way that if they were honest about answering your questions and honest about their own feelings and their own perceptions of things, if they were honest, then your view of white supremacy was, I would say, irrefutable. But then from there I heard about your views on sex between white and non-white people. And when I first heard that, I remember thinking it was a bit radical. I was like, what basis is there for this? I hadn't really thought about sexual intercourse, even though I had thought about the system of white supremacy. But I think at that point I saw you around more often, and I was able to hear you have more conversations about that. And from there on out, that was when I saw the truth and the usefulness in that statement.
Very interesting. I guess I'll highlight that for the listeners that Gus T Renegade has been mouthing off about the incorrect nature of sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people for some time, and obviously my thoughts have not changed on that. That's the frame of reference that I had when I looked at the University of Washington's paper for Friday, February 5th. Might account for the difference in what I saw when I looked at the photograph and what other people saw when they looked at the photograph. That could be. I guess, and I hope all of this is in context. I hope this will make sense why I'm not going in order with our guest, Christine Tran, kind of setting the table, so to speak, for this photograph to give some background information. And I thought it was an excellent point Lauren Ashley raised, given that, what Christine Tran has shared with us and her experience. How did she miss this photograph? So hopefully this will lay some groundwork for that. Before we get to the photograph, I did want to I want to check to see if Justice has some questions. Justice, do you have some questions you would like to ask our guest, Christine Tran?
How does the system of white supremacy harm non-white people directly and indirectly?
How does the system of white supremacy harm non-white people? Is that what you said?
Yes, directly and indirectly.
I think it harms non-white people directly by taking away opportunities that we have to make the most of our lives. And a lot of that is in material benefits, in the extent to which we can enjoy our lives and just existing in public, going places without being judged or labeled just for being non-white. And indirectly, I would say that it harms non-white people by conditioning us to be unable to think outside of what we've been conditioned to believe. So maybe that was a bad way to put it, but it conditions us to perpetuate the system of white supremacy, which, going back to my first answer, directly disadvantages us in many ways.
What suggestions can you offer to help eliminate racism, white supremacy?
I would say that at least for non-white people, I think it's important for us to be aware of it and to get to a point where we can talk about white supremacy and learn more about white supremacy without having visceral responses when we talk about it. Because I've observed many times in actually both white and non-white people that all logic and reasoning goes out the window when they are asked questions about white supremacy, about their role in white supremacy, or their role and their position in the context of white supremacy, and about how they operate and are perceived in that system. So I think a big suggestion would be to practice talking about it and to practice talking about it and to consciously be aware of it at all times, because I think it has a potential to present itself and possibly affect us at all times.
All right, that's good for now.
Okay.
Justice, Gus T Renegade, Context of White Supremacy, our guest for today's program, Christine Tran, co-host of Genital Discourse at Rainy Dog Radio. Not quite hopping off subject. It might seem that way, not at all. I once was hoping you could share a tidbit of your experience. You were able to make a trip to the area of the world known as Kenya this past summer, and just we spoke about this in detail. I don't want to go that far into it, but I at least wanted to highlight a couple things for the listeners. I think someone told you before you left for your trip that you were going to get to be white when you went to Kenya. Can you talk about that, and then can you share after you got there whether or not this ended up being true or false?
Sorry, what was the first part of that question?
The trip to Kenya that you took, can you share, I guess before you left, when someone said that you were going to get to be a white person, can you share about that and then whether or not it was true or false when you actually got to Kenya?
Okay. When I heard that, I believe a Kenyan actually told me that. I heard it from quite a few people, but I think I remember hearing it from my Swahili professor, who was Kenyan. And when I heard that, having gone through March for Solidarity and learned and engaged in discourse with you about white supremacy, when I heard that, my first reaction was, really? And then I thought more about it, and I didn't get off the plane expecting that I would be treated like a white person, but I was interested in whether or not that would play out, because we kind of touched on this earlier on in the show, but non-white people, such as so-called Asians like myself, are in a categorically different position from non-white black people. So, having that said, I was curious about whether that would hold true, because we were just told that, actually, this is kind of ridiculous, we were just told that Westerners were considered white. And Westerners would include my black classmates who went with me. And when we got there, that certainly did not hold true. I've told a couple people that while I was in Kenya, I had never felt more Asian, been more conscious of this identity, this way that people saw me. I had never been more conscious of that than I had in my entire life as I was in Kenya. While at times I did feel like I was perhaps given better treatment than other Kenyans and other black American classmates who were on the trip with me, I was also marked as Asian everywhere I went. I would walk down the sidewalks in Nairobi, and it was not uncommon for passersby to just say ching chong under their breath, or maybe not even under the breath, to yell it across the street or yell it from a bus when I was just walking down the street, or to walk through slums or go to an art festival and have all of the kids mark me as a relative of Jackie Chan or something like that. So it definitely didn't hold true that by virtue of having lighter skin than black people, of being a non-white, non-black person. It was not true that I was considered white in Kenya.
Did you see evidence while you were there that in this area of the world, did you see evidence that black people were being mistreated more so than non-black, non-white people, even black people who are so-called U.S. citizens?
Yeah, I would say so. It's hard to think of specific examples, but, or actually, I told you this story before, Gus, but when I was walking, our class went through a visit of the Kibera slums. I think it's important to note that this was a University of Washington study abroad program based on the theme of health, human rights, and social transformation. And we were walking through Kibera one day, and it just so happened that all the school kids had gotten out of school, and they swarmed around us, and we had like 3 kids holding each of our hands. They just wanted to touch us and be with us. But the 2 black girls who were on the trip with us didn't get any of that attention at all, despite being better dressed, obviously not from the slums, obviously with us as a group, but not getting any of that attention at all.
Wow. I wanted to highlight that for our listeners because that's not the first time I have heard stories like that. Back of the Bus has also been able to go abroad, and he had very similar stories that the white people, they were all in the same program, that the white people were treated much better by the black people in so-called Africa than the black people who were on the same trip. Black people from the States just didn't seem to have as much value as the white people who were there to visit, which I think is important, very important. So you did not, even though you said you did feel while you were in Kenya, you did feel privilege, you did feel more value than the black people, the black kids in Kenya. They weren't treating you like the black kids from the States, but you definitely did not feel white. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Okie dokie. There are lots of tidbits around this. I'm hoping we can get one of her comrades who participated in this trip to come on the show and get more details. So I'm trying to leave things on the table so we can continue this dialogue. Okay, so coming back to the newspaper. Gus T Renegade and actually Yellow Manny, and hopefully we'll get to hear from him. I'm going to make time so that we can get him in if he's with us. And then I have a full switchboard, so hopefully we'll get lots of questions from folks. Genital Discourse, your program that you co-host with the suspected white supremacist known as Ross Parsons. Gus T Renegade and Yellow Manny were supposed to participate in that program on Friday, February 12th. I know you and I, Christine, we had spoken about that program. We went over details, and it didn't happen. Can you share with our listeners what happened that caused Yellow Manny and Gus T Renegade, our invitations to Genital Discourse, to be rescinded?
Yes. I had actually kind of gone ahead and talked with you about the Daily's front page and about having you on the show to talk about the front page, because I think you would have done a great job of facilitating the conversation about about sexualization of non-white people in a system of white supremacy. So I went ahead and extended that invitation to you and contacted Ross Parsons about that afterwards, thinking that it would have been okay, since I do a lot of the research for the show and find a lot of the articles that we'll talk about, and he's usually okay with all of that. And when I emailed him about having you on the show, I'm looking back at our emails here right now, and I'm trying to paraphrase since I don't have permission to directly quote these on air. But I said, quote, "I'm even thinking about having Gus on the show," and I sent him a link to your February 7th radio show regarding the Daily Front Page. I said, "I'm even thinking about having Gus on the show as a guest since he speaks about racism and white supremacy very clearly, capital letters, in a way that I've never encountered before, which would be helpful since a lot of people will probably ask, but why is all of this daily stuff relevant to genital discourse?" So I sent that to him as part of one of our co-host planning emails for the week, and his response was basically that he didn't want Gus on air because he didn't want to come out swinging at the Daily and seeming like we were attacking the Daily. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but sorry, I'm just reading the emails. Basically, Gus, you talk about white supremacy and racism too clearly in a way that he thought might scare off listeners of Genital Discourse, and that would very much offend the Daily because they would feel like they were being attacked.
For our listeners, Ross Parsons, is he a white person?
Yes. In the email, after listening to your radio show about the Daily Front Page, he actually said I don't know if he realized what his words were saying, but he said also, "I am a suspected white supremacist," even though in conversations that took place after that email, he really questioned your perspective on white people and their role in the context of white supremacy. He didn't like the blanket generalization, so to speak, of all white people being potential racists and suspected white supremacists.
Did he say that was incorrect, or did he just say that he didn't like it? To suspect that, see, now that's key distinction. Would have loved the opportunity to have Mr. Parsons on the program. And this, I guess, going back to our conversation, when you and I spoke, I believe that was last Thursday, February 11th. When you and I spoke, do you recall me sharing that I suspected that, number one, I suspect Ross Parsons, exactly as I stated on the previous program, I suspect he is most likely a racist white supremacist. That's number one. Number two, this program, The Context of White Supremacy, used to air on Rainy Dog Radio. I had shared that with you, I think, multiple times, and my concerns with Rainy Dog Radio, the current general manager, suspected racist white supremacist Jason Baxter. He was affiliated with Rainy Dog Radio when the Cows was broadcast from the U.W.S radio station. He's still there now. I suspected that they would be opposed, strongly opposed, to having Gus T Renegade make a return to Rainy Dog Radio and to help counter their opposition and any obstacles to having me on the program. I had suggested using a pseudonym. I believe I gave you a different name that I wanted to be referenced as other than Gus. To your knowledge, do you recall all of this being accurate when I just stated?
Yes.
Okay.
I just made the mistake of having Ross listen to your program and realize how clear your views were. He stated repeatedly that he was uncomfortable with you calling Jason Baxter a white supremacist. And
wait a minute. Did I call him a white supremacist, or did I call him a suspected?
White sorry.
Okay.
My mistake. I believe you if you said that because I didn't listen to that part of the February 7th radio show. I kind of clicked through it and listened to about an hour of it. So I don't know verbatim what you said about your experience with Rainy Dog. So on the program, you said, you probably said, you can confirm this, that Jason Baxter was a suspected white supremacist. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. But in my conversations with Ross Parsons, he really didn't want trouble from the station because his perception was that you had called Jason Baxter a white supremacist.
Okay. Did you listen to the broadcast where I discussed the paper with your photo on the front page? Did you hear me reference Ross Parsons in the bits that you heard of the program?
I do not recall that.
Okay. Given what you stated at the beginning of the broadcast, in saying you have been conditioned to be fearful and suspicious of black people, that would be number one. And equally important, when Justice asked how you function around white people who practice racism, you said that you make an effort to be on your best behavior and that you don't want to upset white people. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of what you said. Okay. Given that, I am very suspicious. This seems like, and I could be incorrect, but I suspect it could have been you did not want to upset these white people. I strongly recall you saying when we spoke that you didn't even view this as a shared broadcast. You felt this was your program because you put in a lot more work in getting the articles and things you all were going to talk about, and that the suspected racist known as Ross Parsons, he just kind of shows up. He's a comedian, one. He just kind of shows up and does, I guess, whatever his role is in the program. I suspect that you did not want to upset the white people at Rainy Dog Radio. You did not want to upset your co-host, bringing Gus T Renegade, a black male who speaks clearly, perhaps too clearly, although that's pretty strange to have someone not be good because they speak too clearly about a subject matter, to bring Gus T Renegade and Yellow Manny into the studio and upset these white people, which might have repercussions for you, your role at Rainy Dog Radio, even being able to use this on as a reference, or not as a reference, but as an activity down the road, applying for different schools or whatever have you. I suspect that strongly could have motivated you to share the link to this program with Ross Parsons, to not follow through on using the pseudonym that I told you I wanted to use for the program. I was not going to use Gus T Renegade going to Rainy Dog Radio. What I just laid out, does that sound logical? Does that sound sensible? Does that sound like that's what could have happened?
Yeah, I think it is. But just to clarify, I had talked to Ross about having you on the program and referred to you as Gus before we talked about your new pseudonym.
Okay.
But
is that information? Go ahead.
Pardon? Oh.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to continue to say that I do think I just didn't want to upset them for a couple of reasons. I'm not being paid for doing Rainy Dog Radio, but I essentially sent in my resignation yesterday saying that I would not be continuing on for another quarter, even though they had wanted me for the rest of the school year. But now that I committed to this, even though the daily article came out and I've reevaluated whether or not non-white people can even talk about sex very explicitly and openly without being sexualized, despite all that, I was committed to finishing out the quarter and finishing out the program that I had started. So I didn't want to work in a context where if I had been the instrumental person in bringing you into the studio and I upset everyone else at the station, I didn't really want to have to deal with the repercussions of that. And then also, I was a bit worried about what repercussions that would have for me personally, since, granted, Rainy Dog Radio is just the radio station at UW. It doesn't exactly have a academic affiliation, but given my experiences with March for Solidarity, given the abuses of non-white people that I've seen at the hands of University of Washington sub-institutions, I was a bit wary of putting myself in that position.
Okay. And like I said, I wholeheartedly appreciate the honesty, as much honesty as we can bear. I have a great respect for that. I guess my response would be, as a black male, everybody listening, I look at that photograph of Christine Tran on the front page. Not black, as she has stated. Not black. Asian female, grew up, as she said, around well-to-do white people. Gus T Renegade, a black male. I did not grow up around well-to-do white people. I do not own a phone. I do not own a computer. Christine Tran has a MacBook. I don't have a MacBook. I just think it's very important that all non-white people make an effort to be honest with one another. And I especially think be honest with black people. If nothing else, just be as honest as possible. For me, I think it would have been best if, when we spoke, it would have been best and it would have been most accurate if you had raised your concerns then about, hey, I don't want to ruffle these white people that I'm working with, even though I don't know if I want to stick this out, even though I'm thinking I might be resigning and just finishing out the quarter and calling it a career at Rainy Dog with Genital Discourse. I still might not want to upset these white people bringing you in. I am vested, and I've seen how non-white people can be mistreated when they make an effort to counter racism, white supremacy. So, and in fact, I've already discussed bringing you on the show, and I've referenced you as Gus. I'm not going to use a pseudonym. I'm thinking about sending him your program. It would have been best if you had shared all of that information with me, as opposed to saying, this is my program. And I remember even asking questions then. I don't know if you recall, but I remember when you said that. This is my program. I do more of the work. I get the articles. I feel like Ross Parsons, suspected racist, he doesn't even contribute equally in the effort for this program. And I remember the first thought that clicked in my head, Ross Parsons is white. I do not think he is a junior partner in this endeavor. I know he's a comedian. I'm real certain that he probably doesn't do any of the research for articles and all that stuff. I'm quite certain that you are working hard to do a professional broadcast and to share constructive information with your listeners, just because of the respect that I have for you as a scholar. But, and this is exactly what we shared on the program with Neely Fuller Jr. last week, in the system of white supremacy plays out on a personal level every day with the white person that you're sitting next to, the white person you're on your job with, the white person you're at the radio studio with. Ross Parsons being a white person, that means a lot in the context of white supremacy. And I think it would have just been better if we could have acknowledged that truthfully on Thursday, as opposed to speaking as though, you know, this is going to happen, we'll do the pseudonym, and not really clearly, accurately stating, hey, I've got some self-interest here that I want to protect. I think that would have been best. And I think, as a general rule, if non-white people, especially non-black, non-white people could do that, that would be extremely helpful. Even if it hurts, even if it's, hey, I'm not messing with you black people. I have self-interest. I'm doing well. I have career aspirations that I'm trying to protect. I cannot be in this replace white supremacy with justice thing with you all. I know you're mistreated, and I know that's messed up, but I got dreams. I got things I'm trying to accomplish. That would be best. That would be most helpful, because at least everybody would be on the same page with what to expect and what's happening. Could I have your feedback on that, please?
Yeah. Well, to be honest again, when we talked on Thursday, I was honest to my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, I was telling the truth when I said that I do put most of the effort into the show, and in that sense I have control of the show. But, you know, when I said that and it ran through your mind that despite doing most of the concrete work for the show, I don't have full control of the show by virtue of Ross Parsons being a white person. That part of it was and is and always will be true as long as we're operating in the context of white supremacy. But at that point, I had never encountered any opposition from Ross, so that didn't even cross my mind. I was planning to tell the station, like if I had been able to get you onto the show, I would have told the managers at the station that I was having Greg Mills onto the show, not Gus. But I made the mistake of introducing you as Gus to Ross, and having him listen to your broadcast and your take on the daily article. And when he was opposed to having you on the show, that was when I realized all of the self-interest that all the things that I had to protect for myself in self-interest. And that was when I realized that how big of a part Ross could play, or that Ross does play in the show. Because had he been supportive of me in bringing you into the studio, all of these would be moot points. I really feel that even if we had you in the studio and Jason Baxter and other members of the Rainy Dog staff were strongly opposed to having you in the studio, if Ross had stood by me on that, even after you came into the studio, talked to him about white supremacy, and analyzed the Daily Front Page in the context of white supremacy on air, I think that if Ross had given me full support on that, then it would be smooth cruising from there. But that just didn't cross my mind, that he would be opposed to it. And that decision of his changes the game. because in that case, it would have just been me against my co-host as well as the Rainy Dog staff, all of whom are white, with the exception of, I believe, one staff member.
Very interesting. I want to see if Justice has questions, but a quickie before I go to Justice. Would it be accurate to say that you did not suspect Ross Parsons could be a racist white supremacist prior to this minor conflict?
Knowing what I know now and going through what I've gone through now, I should have expected it, but in practice I didn't. Even before that went down, it theoretically made sense in my head why white people under the system of white supremacy should be considered to be suspected white supremacists who practice racism. But when it came down to put it into practice, that broke down. And that did not cross my mind.
I see this happen all the time amongst tons of non-white people who say that they are informed about racism, white supremacy. It breaks down on a personal level. The day-to-day white people that they come in contact with, they totally lose track of the context of white supremacy and what that means on an individual level with even Ross Parsons of the world, who's a comedian. I mean, we're not talking about, to my knowledge, a Rhodes Scholar, somebody who is looking to get a PhD. He's a stand-up comic. I've seen video. I think I've even seen this person live. I could be wrong, but I think I've seen him live. And I think he even made a comment that was suspiciously racist when I saw him, but that's neither here nor there. Justice, do you have some questions you would like to ask our guest?
How do you work to produce justice? Hello?
Yeah. Oh, I heard your question. I'm thinking, ruminating. How do I work to produce justice? That is a difficult question for me to answer now that I'm realizing how much my understanding of the system of white supremacy breaks down on a personal level. Because in that sense, if I can understand it theoretically but not personally, I don't know if I can. If you had asked me that question prior to this, I would have said that I try to disrupt the system of white supremacy and move towards producing justice by talking to non-white people and starting to talk to white people about this. But having had all of this, which has reevaluated my own practice and the way that I understand the system of white supremacy, I do not know if I can do that effectively, at least right now, with my understanding of white supremacy.
How can the system of white supremacy be stopped?
I think to answer that question, it you would have to look at how the system of white supremacy is produced. And I think the system of white supremacy rests on indoctrinating white people with the belief that they are naturally superior, that they should be accorded more privileges than non-white people. And on the other hand, it works by conditioning non-white people to believe the same thing. It's the same ends, but there's different means to that. There's different ways that white people are taught to believe that they're superior, and ways that non-white people are taught to believe that we are inferior, and we're taught to see white people as naturally more deserving. We probably see white supremacy playing out on a daily basis, and many times won't catch a lot of what goes on. So I think to stop white supremacy would be to stop that conditioning, which happens on a lot of different levels.
Do you talk about racism and white supremacy on your show?
We didn't talk about racism and white supremacy. Well, we didn't talk about white supremacy the way that we're talking about it now. A couple weeks ago, we discussed an article about non-white women going out and buying skin bleaching creams at little bodegas and beauty stores, and those beauty creams those bleaching creams had a lot of detrimental health effects for the non-white women, and we talked about that in the context of racism, but that was the farthest it had gotten until the last show, where we devoted probably the better part of the show to talking about the Daily Front Page. And that was in the context of racism and white supremacy.
How do you feel getting mistreated?
How do I feel when I'm mistreated? Is that the question?
Yes.
I feel frustrated. And this front page is a fantastic example of mistreatment in a system of white supremacy, and a fantastic example of how I feel when that happens. Frustrated because I would like to think that compared to the general population, I have a pretty good grounding in this understanding, but as our discussion has obviously shown, that breaks down when it becomes more personal, and then also frustrated because I don't feel like I have control over over how that happened and how that played out. Although I do think, although I'm almost appreciative of not the mistreatment, but being able to realize and to see the mistreatment for what it is, so that I can take steps to prevent it in the future.
Because I'll be off for now.
Okay.
How does it feel to be Asian and not black under the system of racism and white supremacy?
How does it feel to be Asian and not black?
How does it feel to be Asian and not black under the system of racism and white supremacy?
Well, I obviously don't know what it's like to be black, but from what I've learned, from what I've seen, and from my interactions with black people and talking to black people about racism and white supremacy, honestly, I would have to say I feel thankful, because going through this, it's as bad as that sounds, like going through this has been difficult and confusing enough as it is, and I think with the conditioning that is directed specifically towards black people that exists in a system of white supremacy, it would make it 10 times harder to understand what I'm working with, because I think black people are exposed to education and values and messages that are engineered specifically to prevent them from thinking about the system of white supremacy in a productive, constructive way.
Do so-called Asians get more of the ability to do more things than black people?
I would say so. Being a non-white but also non-black person obviously doesn't give you the privilege and the opportunities that you would have if one were white, but it also doesn't take away as many opportunities as you would have taken away if you were black under the system of white supremacy.
How do you think you would feel once the system of racism and white supremacy is eliminated?
I'm trying to imagine that, because that's a difficult thing to imagine. But if the system of white supremacy were eliminated, I think I would feel quite empowered, having had all of these opportunities open up to me, and to almost know that if everything were based on justice instead of an underlying system of white supremacy, that would give me the reassurance of knowing that hard work would equate with progress.
What ways do you know of how to get money?
Of how to get money. Ways that I have engaged in, or ways that I just know
of? Getting a job.
Oh, okay. So just examples of what I know of. Getting a job to start with blogging on the internet, selling drugs, prostitution and porn, making a name for yourself and selling yourself by doing lectures and public appearances. The stock market. Is that the kind of answer you're looking for?
That sounds good for now.
Okay.
Groovy, all-star, justice, Gus T Renegade, context of white supremacy. Now we should be at the picture. I hope it has been clear.
I have to interrupt you and say that you are coming through very fuzzy, at least on my end.
Uh-oh. Hold on, let me see if I can correct that.
Sounds better now.
Oh. Okay. Am I good? I can be heard clearly?
Yeah, you're crystal clear.
Woohoo!
Yep.
Right on. Yay for white people's technology. Okay. I hope it has been clear why I wanted to start, not directly at the photograph, but starting at a different point so we could walk up to the photograph. And maybe now we'll have more clarity around what Christine thought about the photograph when she first saw the front page of the Daily last Friday. We have a lot of people that called in, so I'm going to see if we can, we should be able to knock this out pretty quickly. If you could tell us, I guess, what happened when the folks from the Daily, when they came to conduct this interview with you and your co-host, Ross Parsons, how many photographs were taken? Was Ross included in photographs? If you could set that up and then tell us your first reaction when you actually saw the paper last Friday.
Okay. Photos and reaction. Well, first of all, I want to start out by saying that in the beginning of the show, when you made the disclaimer that you were going to go about this in a nonlinear fashion, now that we've pretty much been through your progression of questions and exploring my past, it's actually been quite, you did it quite perfectly. Very, very linear. Everything that you talked about, March for Solidarity and especially Kenya, were, I think, big contributors to my reaction when I first saw the paper and my reaction after I realized what the paper was representing. But to get to the meat of your question, the interviews were actually done separately, and I think that was just based on scheduling constraints. My interview took like 10 minutes. Ross's was the same, by Molly Rosbach, the reporter, and the photographer was different. Reporter was a white female, photographer was a white male, and we met in the studio on a day when we actually weren't doing the radio show, and Ross and I just sat in our usual positions with the mics and started just having a normal conversation off the air, looking as if we were doing the show. And the photographer just snapped pictures of us while we talked. And after hearing the shutter click that many times, I would say that probably anywhere from 50 to 100 or upwards of 100 photos were taken of both me and Ross individually talking into the microphone, in a conversation where we talked seriously and we laughed a lot. So many different facial expressions were probably expressed over the course of that 5-10 minute conversation. And then Ross and I were asked to sit next to each other in front of the soundboard in the studio and just smile for the camera. Probably about 5 or 10 of those were taken, and just like that, the shoot was over. And it took about, let's see, we did the shoot on a Thursday, and the article came out not that Friday, but the next Friday. So they had they had 1 week to put all of that together. And when that front page came out, I actually wasn't on campus that day, but I saw it online, and the first thing I saw was the picture. And my first reaction was, first of all, I'm making a really weird, awkward face. And second of all, Ross and I were both at the studio. Why is Ross not in the picture? And I actually looked through, and then that was when I picked up the hard copy, and I looked through kind of expecting that maybe there would be like a small black and white picture at least of Ross being represented as a co-host of Genital Discourse somewhere, but that was not the case. And I think it was important for us to cover my experience in Kenya because, very ironically, even though it was a study abroad trip centered around learning about human rights, and for me, I was very curious about how it would contribute to my understanding of white supremacy as a global system, I came back and I was so stressed out from what I experienced, from just living in that kind of an environment, that when I came back, I didn't think very critically about racism or white supremacy for quite a couple of months, which is highly ironic. And when I saw that picture, honestly, my initial reaction was just those two things and nothing more, which I think is very telling given that I'm a sexuality and gender studies major.
Very interesting. So how did you evolve? How did your thinking about this image evolve to where you thought, wait a minute, I think this is that old racism cropping up again?
Yellow Manny called me up and asked me what I thought about the photo, about the front page, and I didn't have much to say about it except for those things. I mean, and then I went on a spiel about how I kind of like got defensive without even being provoked to be defensive about how I thought Genital Discourse was an important show to do and blah, 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 sex education is important and there's no such other resource like this on campus. But then Yellow Manny kind of walked me through all of the, or some of the clues on the page that would strongly suggest that especially since this was produced in the context of white supremacy, that all of this was a very blatant exploitation of my image and sexualization of a non-white female. And when he talked to me about, even when he was laying it out for me, I was a little hesitant to believe it, I think because it was so personal. You know, it's like a humongous picture, and this was far more coverage than I had ever gotten doing work in March 1st or in other things that I'd been involved in that had been featured in the Daily. And when he told me about the picture, I was like, well, like it's not like that deliberate, and he was like, how many shots did they take? How did you realize that the online picture for the online edition of the Daily is that exact same picture but not cropped, so that you can see my body, my entire torso, that I'm sitting in a chair, that I'm at the radio station and I'm doing a show, versus just a very zoomed in picture of just the microphone and me. And having had it laid out so clearly, that was when I started seeing the front page for what it was, and for seeing all of the other little things that contributed to that interpretation.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Wowzers. We have a full switchboard. I'm going to concede to the switchboard. If Yellow Manny is present, he can come in now. There are 7 people, I believe, on the line. Back of the Bus is with us. Back of the Bus, if you have a question, you have control of your own mic, so feel free. If you have a question, go right ahead. Back of the Bus or Lauren Ashley, if you have a question, go right ahead. If not, I'll just roll down the switchboard.
Okay. Lauren Ashley, do you want to go? I'll go right ahead. Christine.
Howdy.
Christine, can you hear?
Yep.
Greetings. Have you heard of the term snitch?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to provide a definition and ask you if you believe that's an accurate definition of the term snitch. Snitch, to provide information directly or indirectly that would promote the mistreatment of any victim of racism and or impede efforts of any victim of racism attempting to replace white supremacy with justice. And there's a number 2 definition, and that is to assist the white supremacist by providing information in exchange for resources or position.
Can you repeat the first one again?
Yes, to provide information directly or indirectly that will promote the mistreatment of any victim of racism and or impede the efforts of any victim of racism attempting to replace white supremacy with justice. Do you believe those are accurate definitions?
Yeah, I would say. I've just never thought of the connotation that I've heard snitch, in which I've heard snitch being used, is generally when, like quote unquote tattletaling. But your definition has a much wider implication, but I think I'd be willing to accept it. I've just never thought of it that way before.
By that definition, did you snitch on
You're
Gus
getting
T
a little
Renegade?
fuzzy.
Can you hear me?
Kind of. Like half of what you're saying. You're a little fuzzy.
By that definition, did you snitch on Gus T Renegade, which prevented him from appearing at the Rainy Dog Radio broadcast of Genital Discourse? Could I be heard?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're still fuzzy, but I heard your question. I guess that could be said using that definition. In the sense that by not disagreeing with my co-host and just bringing Gus into the studio anyways, I impeded his ability to express his views on the front page of the Daily in the context of white supremacy.
Yeah, that's a suggestion I throw out there for victims of racism. Don't snitch on another victim of racism, especially if it can be prevented. I'm certain that white people manipulate us and use us to do things for them, but if we're aware, try not to snitch on another victim of racism. Just a suggestion.
I understand, and I believe I spoke with Yellow Manny, and I told him that if I were not black, still non-white, but just not black, I most likely would not be working against racism, white supremacy. If I lived out in Bellevue, around white people who had a lot of resources and, well on my way to having a successful career, I don't think I would be hanging out with Gus T Renegade and working to replace white supremacy with justice. I think it's very important if we're going to do that, make sure you at least snitch to the black people and let them know, hey, I've got a lot of self-interest to protect here. Can't really be going gung-ho about this. Yeah, I know white supremacy is bad. Yeah, hey, you're black. Yes, I know. I've been to Kenya. Oof, I feel for you, but that's cool. Just let us know so we can all be on the same page. That would be extraordinarily helpful for non-white people. Honest as we can be. 111. You called in. Somebody at 111. If you have a question for our guest, Christine Tran, go right ahead. Are you just listening? Caller at 111.
Oh, I guess that's me. Can you hear me?
That is you. Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing, Gus?
I am well, sir. Thank you for being a consistent listener. If you have a question, go right ahead.
Yeah, Christine, I guess I'll ask, how much was the picture changed from your understanding? Was it manipulated, and what ways was it manipulated?
I am not a photography expert, but I do see that the picture that was on the hard copy cover of the front page, which takes up well over 2/3 of the top fold, was simply a very cropped version of the picture that appears in the online version of the Daily. And in that picture, the background of the studio is generally out of focus, but my entire body, as well as the entire setup of the microphone, are in focus. And I'm sure you could have done that with camera lens or something like that, but I think mainly what contributed to the context of this front page picture was that it was heavily cropped, and that certain things were put in focus while certain things were blurred out.
You said you were, when you were in that room, you were talking into the mic. They had you guys talking into, what was the mic doing there in the first place?
They wanted to simulate us actually doing the show, but the show goes on Fridays from 9 to 11, which is a pretty inconvenient time for the photographer to take pictures of us. So instead, there was another radio show going on at the time, but the DJ was just playing music. So we turned off the mics and just pretended that we were actually on air and talking into the microphones.
Okay. Well, you heard the show with Gus, his analysis of the photo, the cover.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he was pretty upset about it, and he was saying that Manny was pretty upset about it, and I think that how just being black and seeing an injustice, because I was upset about it, and a lot of the callers, I was one of the callers that called in the night he did his analysis, and I was upset about it also, because it was a injustice, clear injustice, and it seemed like it was like an exploitation, like you weren't in a position to defend yourself. And I just think that for us being upset the way we were, and then and you being an Asian female, someone that's thankful that she's not black. I think you coming on the show and expressing yourself the way you did is was very important, and it was a good show that you expressed yourself, and I think black people need to take that and consider. I think black people that listen to this particular program have a lot to think about when they're in view of your comments.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's 909. Thank you, 909, for calling in. Hang tight on the line. I want to make sure we get some other folks in before the program goes out. Non-Mightywick, do you have questions for Christine Tran?
Yes, sir. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Christine, are there any other white people besides the white person on your show that you do not behave suspicious of?
Sorry, you're a bit fuzzy, but I can still kind of hear you. So are there white people besides the white person on Genital Discourse that ... I lost you.
That you do not behave suspicious of.
That I would not be very suspicious of?
That you currently do not behave suspicious of.
Okay, sorry, I just can't hear your question. You're just cutting in and out really quickly.
Am I clear now?
Can I be heard?
Yes, but you're also fuzzy. I can make out what you're saying, though, because you're louder.
What about now, Kristen? Let me try one more time.
I can hear you now.
Are there other white people besides the white people on your show, on Genital Discourse, that you do not behave suspicious of?
No. I think that at this moment there is no white person that I would not be suspicious of. I think it was a misstep on my part when I talked to Gus on Thursday that I somehow thought that just because Ross hadn't ever opposed any of my suggestions before, that he would not oppose my suggestion to have someone speak very clearly about racism and white supremacy on the show. So in that case, I should have been suspicious of him, but what can I say? I just wasn't. I think it's another example of how that understanding of white supremacy and racism breaks down when it gets to a personal level. So short answer, no.
Okay.
Did you have another question, non-Mightywick?
Not at this time, thanks.
Okay. 646. If you have a question for Christine Tran, you are on the air. Are you just listening? 646. Okay. I think 646 is just listening. If you have a question, 646, just press 1 and I can get your hand. 206 with a hand up. 206, you are on live. If you have a question, go right ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello? I hear you.
Hi, this is Tired, and I just, my question is, do you believe that Asian people are held more credible, in the system of white supremacy, are they held more credible in comparison to black people? And if so, if you can give examples of, because I think that would be helpful for those listening that are not non-whites but are black. So
I think, from my perspective, I would say yes to that question, because of the different ways that both white people and all non-white people have been taught to perceive Asian people versus black people. Asian people, especially now in a political context, China is being touted as the next great nation, the next great world power. In some instances, even being spun as a world power so great that it'll be competition for the U.S. And that isn't a representation of Asian individuals, but on a global scale, that's a representation of Asians gaining more clout and power in society, regardless of whether or not that is true. Whereas a similar progression cannot be said of any black nations. In fact, quite the opposite. You know, with Zimbabwe being a failed state, Kenya being one of the most corrupted countries in the world, what's happened with Haiti right now, and all the criticism that their government has gotten. So those are political examples, but then also I think on a day-to-day basis, you know, Asians are characterized as being the bookish academic scholars, whereas black people are characterized as, you know, people who drop out of school and enter the prison system at a very early age and don't take their own lives into their own hands. And both of those characterizations are believed by many people and continue to be perpetuated regardless of whether or not that is true.
hello.
Hi.
Appreciate it. I would also like to comment that on my trip and going to South Africa, I observed the same things that you have, like black babies or kids would cling on to the white students that were there, as well as there was one non-white person who was also labeled as the Asian, like so-called Asian person, and they also clung on to her, but 3 black students that went there, no black kid came towards them, and if they did, they would soon leave towards the white students and cling on to them and just pat their hair and then look at their hair and then pat, you know, kind of like, I want your hair kind of thing. So just an interesting observation. It's everywhere. It happens often, but just another observation. That's all.
Yeah. True. When I was in Kenya, I was actually, there were 15 students and we were put in groups of 3 for rooming together, and I was in an apartment with a black female and a white female, and we would always note that when we went out, the white female was always, people gravitated towards her more. People liked talking to her more and asking her about the study abroad program, about the University of Washington, about Seattle, about America, more than they would for me or the black female, the black roommate. Just another thing to note.
Okay, appreciate it. That's all for now, though.
Excuse me. Thank you, Tired Victim. Did you have time for one more question, Christine?
Yeah, sure.
Okie dokie. Lauren, Ashley, I don't know if you want to ask yourself your mic is open, you can ask yourself. If not, she typed her question out, so I can ask it if she doesn't want to do it herself, but she is on the line, so she can ask herself if she would like.
Well, I got so many questions, so can you just pick? Yeah.
You can ask her. You can prioritize your questions and see how many she would like to answer.
Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 questions.
Okay. Go slowly and I'll write it down.
She said what?
She said go ahead.
Oh, okay. Cool beans. Who are you most likely to suspect, white women or white men, as being white supremacists?
Would you, like, in terms of just suspecting them to be a white supremacist, I would just say both. Mm-hmm. Although, in many cases, it would probably be a lot easier for white women to practice it and for that to go unnoticed, or less noticed than for a white male.
I agree. How do white women treat you?
White women. I'm trying to think of the white women that I have interactions with. I think they treat me as a bit of a novelty.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. I can get along with white women, having grown up with white girls for most of my life, and I'm a pretty easy person to get along with, to be friendly with and to have good conversations with. But in terms of being, and some people have noted this about me, but like being an Asian female who can be loud and rambunctious at times, and an Asian female who talks explicitly about sexuality and gender, I think that's a big novelty to a lot of white people in general, and to the white women I know. So it's kind of like they can go and tell their friends that they know this really cool Asian girl who does these things, who is different from, all the other non-white people I know, or all the other non-white people that they know. But, in that description, I certainly do not gain the privilege of being accepted as white, no matter how quote-unquote special they think I am.
Is it clear that I don't know, do you date white men?
No.
Is it clear that you don't date white men?
Yes.
Do you think if it was a little blurry that you might let white men take you out, that you would be treated differently?
Treated differently in the sense of being more accepted as white?
No. Treated differently as she's a threat. Because you're very pretty.
Oh.
And you're smart, so, yeah.
As a threat. Maybe? I can't really imagine that for myself, but I'm trying to think of situations where I did have friends who were non-white, non-black females who did date white males. I would say probably, especially given, one, the cattiness that is encouraged between women in general, but then also the hypersexualization of Asian females as, you know, the exotic women of the Orient, or geishas. This was discussed on the last show on the Daily Front page that Gus did. And it's not like that people are explicitly thinking that, but having been exposed to that image and that message again and again, I certainly think it would play into people's perceptions and white women perceptions of myself and other Asian women.
All right. What game white men what game white men, as in what they say and what they do, use to try and have sexual intercourse with you?
Can you repeat the question again?
What game? I don't know what's a better word for game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, white.
Okay, what game white?
Yeah.
What was the last part of the question?
Okay, what game white men, as in what they say and what they do, use to try and have sexual intercourse with you? And it's like a side question. And does that include putting Asian men bluntly or in a subtle way by downing the stereotypical Asian male to try to have sexual intercourse with you?
I think generally what happens is that they want what they have. Like, they mention ways that they're known, so kind of fame, quote unquote, or things that, or like material benefits that they have that give them a quote unquote leg up on everyone else. It's not really explicitly, or at least I haven't noticed anything that's explicitly directed against non-white males, although I certainly wouldn't be surprised if that does happen, or if it had happened and I didn't notice it.
Okay, so they never, I'm trying to think of like a Asian male stereotype, so they've never have, like, said, well, I'm not a pushover or something? Because I know that's a stereotypical, that's a stereotype of an Asian male, or they're not too conservative? They never say anything like that?
Can you repeat? You're a little, there's a bit of...
I'm sorry.
No, it's definitely not your fault.
Do they say things like, I'm not a pushover, because I know that's a stereotype of an Asian male, or that I'm not too conservative? I don't know how to explain it, because... I don't think I've personally experienced that, although the white men that I have had encounters with have been very, very sure of themselves and assertive. Do you think that's because you're Asian? Do you think if you were not Asian, they would be probably come with something else?
Perhaps. I can't say for sure, but I would not be surprised.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last one. What do white people say about other non-white groups around you?
About other non-white groups around me?
Yes, ma'am.
So, like, just non-white, non-Asian groups?
Yes.
What do white people say? I am not quite sure. Are you asking that because of the background that I mentioned that I had in the neighborhood where I grew up?
I'm just doing it because I know white people sometimes when white people get real comfortable around a non-white person, they'll talk crap about another non-white group. So
yeah,
that's why I asked.
At least currently, I don't have very, very close ties with white individuals. So I can't say I would have a good way to answer that question with like a good example or anything.
You're fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruby. I'm not sure. I make an effort to not say that the programs are constructive because I don't know. They might not be. I think this one might have been. I always think it's great when we get honest information, and I think Christine has been pretty honest with us in her responses today. And I always appreciate candid commentary on racism, white supremacy. We went a little over our limit. We're still streaming and everything being recorded, but we did go over our limit. Do you have time for me to check to see if Justice has any questions before we get ready to wrap up? Or
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Justice, do you have any questions you would like to ask Christine?
Do you know any ideas of how to not get mistreated in the system of racism and white supremacy?
Off the top of my head, no. Not to get mistreated, like in certain situations or just in general?
Just anything you can think of.
Not getting mistreated.
What are some suggestions? Sorry about that.
Suggestions on ideas of not getting mistreated?
Yeah.
I guess just being on your toes and understanding the system of white supremacy, and very importantly, which I believe has been illustrated by this radio show and this situation with the Daily, of it's very important to be very aware of the system of white supremacy even when it strikes very close to your own person or your own heart or people who are close to you. To be objective in that, because otherwise I think we are, people don't really like going out of their comfort zone, so we revert to what we've already been taught to think, and those thought processes have certainly not been conditioned to counter the system of white supremacy.
What are some suggestions for things non-white people can do to deal with the stress of racism and white supremacy?
To deal with stress, I think the first and foremost thing, I feel like I said this before in the program already, but it probably bears repeating again. To deal with stress is to talk to people about it. To talk to other people who have a pretty distinct, solid understanding of the system of white supremacy, which gives you the sense, and in this case, in this situation, has given me the sense that I am not the only one that experienced this. I'm not the only one who thought it was a horrible thing and that it wasn't the end of the world, and that there are ways that I can think about the things that I do and the positions that I put myself in, regardless of the fact that maybe I won't have control over the final product or the final outcome. So I would say talking to people is one of the biggest things that a person can do to alleviate the stress that is a result of simply existing in the system of white supremacy.
Where can non-white people go for help when they experience racism and white supremacy?
Go for help. in terms of going for help with their stress reactions, I would reiterate what I just said about being able to talk to other people who have a good understanding of the system of white supremacy, maybe tuning into the C.O.W.S or programs that are like it, to help yourself understand the system better. But in terms of getting help and finding remedies after having been mistreated in the system of white supremacy, I am not sure. Personally, if this, for example, if this situation with Rainy Dog had really impacted my professional standing, then I have connections at the university who are in a good position to help me, and some of those connections are white, so that would help. But beyond that, I am not really sure.
So now we all send our questions for today's show. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Groovy. I guess last question. One of the listeners wants to know how learning about racism, white supremacy has changed your life on a personal level. Yeah, I think that would be a good one to wrap with, Christine. How has learning about racism, white supremacy changed your life on a personal level?
First off, I would say that at first and even now, it's changed my life in that it's made it very stressful because I see the effects of white supremacy and racism around me, operating on myself, on my family, on people who are very close to me on a daily basis. But I think it's also been very helpful for me to better understand how to operate to at least alleviate that mistreatment. I was on an applications committee for a program at the UW recently, and one of the students wrote in with a quote from, I think, like a Harvard professor that said, "If you think education is expensive, try ignorance." And I think that's a very succinct way to describe how I feel about having learned about the system of white supremacy.
Very interesting. I would definitely say, being a non-white person, especially a black person, it is very costly to be ignorant about racism, white supremacy, and I think I see a plethora of examples that illustrate that every day. It has been a pleasure to have you on the program. I think I've learned. I hope folks who tuned in, I hope it was a constructive use of your time and energy. And as I said, great deal of respect for honesty and candid dialogue, and I think we had that today. Thank you for taking time out of President's Day. No class. You could have been out frolicking and doing all of the wonderful things that college undergrads do when they don't have class, but she was hanging out on the C.O.W.S to share views on racism, white supremacy. Real treat. Always welcome to come back. Best of luck with the MCATs. And yeah, Ross Parsons, let him know he's still on the suspected racist list, especially if he did not want someone to come on his program and speak too clearly about racism, white supremacy. That is permanent suspect list. But all the love for Ross Parsons.
Thank you very much for having me on today.
Thank you. We will definitely be in touch. Give my love also to Yellow Manning, victim of white supremacy. And yeah, he will have his own spot on the program, so you can call in and grill him with some questions when you get him on the program.
All right. Maybe we'll talk about somehow finagling you into the studio. Matter soon. I turned in my resignation.
I'm down anytime. I'm down. I would love to meet Mr. Parsons in person and to make a return trip to Rainy Dog. I'm game.
Okay, it was good talking to you today, Gus and Justice both.
Indeed.
Thanks.
We'll be in touch.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care, you too.
Context of white supremacy, Gus T Renegade, Justice, our guest today, Christine Tran. Everybody who called in, your mic is open. I'm going to take a quick commercial break before they kill my switchboard. And, they got me. Wow. They're good. They got me. Oh, well. We will not be taking a commercial break because my switchboard is gone. Yes, everybody is on. Lauren Ashley, Non-Mighty Wick, back of the bus. I believe Tired, 909. Everybody who called in with questions, you are on the air. Feel free to share your commentary about what you heard. If you felt it was constructive, go ahead.
Hello? Can I be heard?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I had to re-listen because I was kind of eating, so. So yeah, but it was interesting to say the least. I just kind of found that was, I don't know, that it was interesting that white men are kind of showing themselves when they come up to her, and her being Asian. So it's kind of, I don't know, thought that was interesting. So I wonder if they think that, because she's Asian, that it's like a closed deal. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna listen to it later. So.
Hello, can I be heard? Hello.
Yes, you can be heard.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, it was a very constructive show, and she was a bona fide guest. That's how constructive it was. Very constructive. And Justice, you asked perfect questions.
Thank you.
Yep, you asked very, very good questions. And
always try.
Yeah, you do a good job. Yeah, I suck at asking questions, but you ask perfect questions. You get a lot of information brought out with your questions, and that's the gift of being 10 years old. You're special.
Yeah, but I don't think you should say that you suck at asking questions, because anybody can ask some really good questions.
Yeah, but I think when you're 10, you just have that extra something. That extra something, you ask perfect questions. So yeah, I try. I mean, I'm trying to get better at asking questions. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to let you know you asked good questions. I'm going to email you too.
All right, I'll try. I'll check in my email box.
All right.
What's your email address, Justice?
justice.asap@yahoo.com. Again, justice.asap@yahoo.com. Nothing is capitalized.
Are you guys on Skype or something? Because the phones, everybody's phone was going in and out. Not everybody, but I know Lauren, your phone, back of the bus, and Gus too. For some reason, you guys' phone, and that never really happened before that I can remember. It was just going in and out for some reason. Are you guys using that system or what?
I know I've been on Skype for I guess, at least a month now, and it's been clear for the most part. I haven't had difficulties. I'm not sure what the issue has been today. I know I got bumped off of the line that I was on, and I had to switch to a different line, so some of the distortion might have come when I switched to a different line. Hopefully that won't be an issue for the next program, but yeah, I had to switch lines, and the Lauren, Ashley, and Back of the Bus, they're on my line, so it might just be, since we're all on the same line together, that the distortion is affecting all of us. But hopefully that will be corrected for the next broadcast.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. I just was wondering why. It was kind of suspicious, but I think it's clear now why you guys were on the same line. But this show, I honestly think that this is one of the best shows we've done, except for the in and out of the audio. This was a good show. When she talked about, and back up, when she talked about when Justice asked her, when the show picked up for me, when I really kind of my eyes opened, is when Justice asked her, what ways does she know how to get money? And she said, like the first thing she said was porn, selling yourself, drugs, and prostitution. To me, that raised the level for me. I said, "Wow, this is great." Like, I don't know why, but that was incredibly interesting. And her answer before that was, Justice asked her, how does she feel being non-black, and she said, thankful. And then after that, she said, that's when she gave the ways to make money were porn, selling yourself, drugs, and prostitution. Oh man, I was like, that's great.
That unfortunately, that's white supremacy. I mean, I think non-white people worldwide, we seem to demonstrate a very limited understanding of economics, and that's about what most of the non-white people that I know have come up with in terms of ways to make money: selling drugs, prostitution, or if a white person can hook me up with some sort of job, they can let me know. That's about it. A very limited understanding of finances. She could have been, to my knowledge, she's not struggling with finances. As she said, she's grew up around white people who are well off, so I don't think she's going to be resorting to selling drugs or prostitution anytime soon. I could be incorrect, don't know, but yeah, it's very telling. And every aspect of that, I think everybody who participated today asked phenomenal questions. Justice, Back of the Bus, excellent questions. Lauren, Ashley, phenomenal questions. Back of the Bus gave a white thumbs up to everybody for the questions that were asked. They were tremendous. Tired, victim of racism, excellent questions. Yeah, and I think she was pretty honest. I think. I guess you all can share. Do you all feel she was honest, or do you feel she was being deceptive in any way in the way that she answered questions?
I guess I can't really put or say if she was honest or not, since I wasn't there to read the emails or observe her interactions with white people. It did appear to me that there was a lot of rationalization when she could have just said, yes, I mean, I snitched on Gus. I don't really have that much to lose. I'm not really vested in caring about black people at this point. I think it would have been much simpler, as opposed to, I don't remember all that was said, but a lot was said in terms explaining what had happened that resulted in Gus being excused from participating in the Rainy Dog broadcast.
Yeah, right. I agree. with that. She could have, her deceptive level, I think, was on maybe 20%, you know, and yeah, I think she was pretty honest, though, you know, honest. Yeah, I think she was a little deceptive, a little protective of her position, whatever that may be, her Asian status and whatnot. Just see when people, I notice like when people talk and then they start hesitating with the answers and not really wanting to come out and just say what you know, how you feel at that moment. You know, that's because they're, you know, that's something they do to protect themselves. So, you know, she did that a couple of times, you know what I'm saying? I guess it could be expected, you know, but it was very constructive, yeah, the show. There's a lot of things in the show that I just really appreciated. But I do think that as far as how we felt about her in that situation, and then I would use the word ally. You know, I know that us being black, we kind of hold the system up because some of our behaviors hold the system up. But it's another thing to be allied with the racist white supremacists. And I come from a city where we deal with Koreans a lot, you know, being from LA, and they are in the liquor stores and the you know, the beauty shops and the nail shops and stuff like that. And it seems like they are allied with our enemies. That's a lot of black people have a resentment for that, and we feel like they're just as susceptible to a certain amount of genetic annihilation. Also, you know, for the stance that they took on trying to be light and whatnot. So, you know, yeah, I think if when the system does go down as soon as possible, I mean, soon as possible, a lot of I guess a lot of non-whites are going to go down with it, and those people that ally themselves with the racist white supremacists, you know, I guess they better appreciate their benefits and their whatever they're getting now, and really enjoy themselves, because the snitches, what did you say, the snitches, what happens to the snitches, you know, yeah.
I did want to point out that I believe in a system of racism, white supremacy. All non-white people are allied, put that in quotes. I believe all non-white people are allied with the racist white supremacists. I think that's what racism, white supremacy means. This program is for sure allied with the racist white supremacists. I don't know how it could be. I think Mr. Fuller has said that if you look at the prison system, all of the prisoners support the prison. So I feel Gus T Renegade is allied with the racist white supremacists as well. So I didn't want it singled out as though there's specific non-white people who partner with racist white supremacists and other non-white people who do not. I'm not aware of any non-white people who do not work with racist white supremacists. If you can find someone, let me know who that is. Is Tired still with us? Is she still on the line, or did she leave?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just listening in, and I mean, the most constructive thing we got, I think, is that black people are not treated like Asian people. I mean, and just that a lot is not going to be revealed to us because we are black. So for non-white people who are black to understand that, I think is important. And that's all I got right now. And that's not to point out, hello? That's not to say anything about Asian people, that's just the system, I feel like, so understanding that and seeing how they function in it and what it means when we are with them and when we are interacting with them and what intentions they might have or they're promoted to have because of the divest. Sorry, did you have a question? I didn't know. Gus?
Gus, did you have a question? I don't know. Maybe there's interference. I think that's accurate. Also, it is accurate what Gus pointed out, and it's important. I'm for the system of white supremacy. I don't want to, but white people ultimately. However, I'm not aware of enough non-white people that are attempting to inform other victims of racism about the system of white supremacy, what it is, how it works, and suggest things that victims can do in an attempt to replace it with justice. I do believe we are all doing what white people tell us to do, but I also believe we do need to modify our thought, speech, and action, ultimately our behavior, so that we can work towards justice.
I didn't have a question per se. I was just curious if just to hear her feedback, what she thought about the program. Yeah, I like I said, that's why I said the people who caught the Friday broadcast. That's why I said I think it would be constructive to have non-black, non-white victims on the program just to speak honestly about how they feel about black people, how they've been conditioned to perceive black people, what they would think about working with black people to replace white supremacy with justice. I think that's important, particularly for anyone who takes the stance that all non-white people are black. Really need to think long and hard about, is that true, number one, and are the people who are classified as Asian or Latino or whatever else other than black, is that something that they really are interested in doing? Based on the evidence I've seen, I don't think so. I could be incorrect, but I think that's something that we need to think about, and I think we need to have the people who are classified as something other than black hear what they have to say. What are their thoughts on black people? And just be honest with ourselves. Same thing I told Christine repeatedly. Let's request the truth, and then when we get it, let's be honest about what information we got. If it was true, let's be honest with ourselves about that. I think that's very important.
Yeah, can I just say for the record that I agree with what you said, Gus, about us being allies. I just didn't know what word was. I think what word I was to use or whatever, but I just think it has to be explored because we're not all black. We're born into this. We're like I don't know. We can't just be ignorant about this system and get along too well. So I think there's some distinctions that there's some distinctions that are made in the system, and we have to understand that. We are all allies in this system. And being honest is important. And that's the key. And your word should be your bond, you know. If you say something, try your best to do it, or just don't give your word. That's a behavior I think we need to adopt.
I agree. Tough one. Tough to do that, and I think it's very tough to be honest with you, particularly for non-white people, because the truth of our stance in the system of racism, white supremacy, is often very tough to swallow for non-white people, especially black people. So I think it is challenging, but I think it's important. And I think that's been one of our big pitfalls in replacing white supremacy with justice. Not being honest with ourselves and each other. I could be incorrect, but we shall see. Before we wrap up, I don't know if the distortion might be a bit much. People might not want to listen to a broadcast with a lot of distortion in it. I did want to say I saw cherry blossoms today when I was coming in for the program. I don't know if that is Groundhog Day effect, but spring looks like it is coming around the corner. I was almost prepared to do a program outside today, but it wasn't quite that warm. Hopefully, a couple weeks I can actually sit outside and do a program, sit under the cherry blossoms, be nice. Did want to point out we'll be back on Thursday. Kari Inoharo, he's the author of Race, Code, War. He's very familiar with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. His book is all about code words and how just the everyday things people say reveals the system of racism, white supremacy. He'll be on the program on Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central. Kari Inoharo. I just want to make note, I'm not even into celebrating so-called Black History Month, but the cows has been clowning for Black History Month. We have had tons of non-white people on this month. Kari Inoharo, black male. Cheryl Judice, black female. This weekend, Dr. Sherman Jackson, black male. We had 5 consecutive non-white guests who were all black on the previous week. We have really lit it up for Black History Month. I don't want to hear any gripes about not having enough representation of black people on the program, even though I've been very clear about my interest in having white people on the show. Be that as it may, represented for Black History Month. Lots of black folks have strolled through the cows, and we should have some more. And Dr. Baruti, he's a black male too. He's coming next week, so tons. We clowned all the way out for Black History Month. Yeah, see, that's why I said we're going to get ready to wrap up, because Justice is saying it's very distorted. So that.
Hey, can I give out a book real fast? I think you would be interested in it too.
Let's hear it.
For all you people that's interested in the white supremacist and China dynamic, there's a book out called The Oil Card by James R. Norman. It's the global economic warfare in the 21st century. The title is called The Oil Card. And they are indeed under the thumb of the racist white supremacists. And this book breaks it down completely. So you will have a codified answer when someone brings up China as somehow exempt from the powers that be.
Wow. Was it the oil card?
Yeah, the oil card.
Okay. I will check that out. Thank you for sharing. Justice told me I am super duper fuzzy wuzzy. So we're going to close out. Did anybody have anything they wanted to share before we wrap up this super duper fuzzy wuzzy broadcast?
You're crystal clear now for some reason.
Thank you for sharing, everybody.
Who was that?
That was me.
Oh, that was you, Justice. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, the broadcast was super duper fuzzy wuzzy. We'll try to correct that next time so that we'll have
Did you have
clarity.
to shout that out?
That's what you said. That's what you said. Yeah, hopefully that'll be corrected so we'll have a crystal clear program on Thursday evening. Yeah, why not? Mr. Fuller, he should be on Talktainment Radio today if you want to continue your counter-racism listening. That program is at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. Talktainmentradio.com. He should be on live. You can call in, ask questions. Yeah, you can check it out. I have nothing else to say about that. Talktainment Radio today, and it's every Monday. That'll wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in for the cows. I saw a lot of people listening in the chat room. They tolerated our super duper fuzzy wuzzy broadcast. Thank you, Khadijah, the folks at Black Talk Radio. They supported as well. Thank you for featuring the show. Please come back on Thursday and this weekend. The cows has been loitering at the #1 spot for educational programs for 7 consecutive days. Thank you all for supporting. I hope it has been worth your time and energy. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. We should be back on Thursday evening, and I hope the broadcast was constructive. Justice and Gus T Renegade signing out. Cows. Thank you.